Well, guys, thank you everybody for coming. We have 49 people here, and let's start this. So I will introduce our host, which it's Jessica Breitenfeld. And the last session, I said that if you don't know Jessica, you should leave because Jessica is a global speaker. She was the district champion in our district, District 107, in 2022. She has spoken in, I believe, all continents so far. So I'm so happy that she accepted the challenge to be the host of these sessions of Winners Academy. Jessica, the stage is yours.
Isidro, very nice. Thank you very much. When I advertised Isidro a couple of years ago for a session I did, I copied and pasted it wrong, and I said that he spoke 9 languages. And after it's pasted, you just don't go back to fix things. So, but actually, John Zimmer is a 9-time European champion of speaking. You'd think it were a typo, but if anyone, and type in the chat box yes or yes in Greek, if you were in Greece when John Zimmer was on stage, and you remember him talking about his hair, the hair that on his chinny chin chin. Who was there with us? Not too many, huh? Not too many.
And not much hair left either, so.
The speech was like a prediction of what's going to happen, maybe. So just don't be afraid, people. If you get so good at public speaking and you do it for 30 years, it's not like you're going to lose some of your hair, even though Isidro and John don't have a lot, and they're some of the best speakers I've ever seen. Antonio, you must be pretty good too. Yes? Yeah. Because it's not that easy to get Mr. John Zimmer. He's very generous with his time and he's very kind. I've known that for years now, but because Isidro was working with him, John said yes, and we're very, very grateful to have such a powerful speaker, a 9-time European champion. 9-time. That's off the charts. I don't know if you know anyone else who's done that. You can name in the chat box because they deserve an applaud as well. John Zimmer also deserves an applaud because he's Canadian, which means I get one too. So John and I live in Europe now, and we're both in the improv comedy scene. And I think that's why he might be so good on stage, but I don't know. So he's a professional speaker. He's co-created a public speaking game, I believe with Flo. Is that the co-creator, John?
Yep.
Yeah, so Flo is one of our famous Toastmasters in Barcelona, and John and Flo and Olivia, they do a speaking summit every year, once or twice a year, usually in Berlin. I'm not 100% sure. So once you move up the ranks and want to get trained by these people, you could definitely reach out. There's this public speaking game. It's called Rhetoric, which is such a public speaking name. You didn't go for any fancy branding. And it's an app now, even in Russian and Catalan. Wow, that was probably Flo's push. He's written a blog about public speaking called mannerofspeaking.org. It's followed by readers around the world, and it was chosen by Prezi as one of the top 100 online resources for public speakers. That's amazing. He was a lawyer. He's got 30 years of experience in legal and business. He's a guest lecturer on public and presentation skills for MBAs and executive MBA programs in universities in Switzerland and Spain. He lives in Switzerland. He's a big supporter, and he's giving back to the community that helped him get on the stage as a 9-time European champion. So round of applause, get your reactions ready. Welcome to the big stage of District 1 Winners Academy. Woo, the crowd goes wild. Thank you, John. Take it away.
Thank you, Jessica and Isidro. Thank you very much, Toastmasters in Spain and Portugal. Muchas gracias, muito obrigado. August 23rd, 2025, 7:29 p.m. Central European Time. Sabyasachi Sengupta has just stepped off the stage after delivering his speech at the finals of the World Championship of Public Speaking. 7:30 p.m., I send Sabby a text, a WhatsApp message that reads, "You are excellent, truly. The lines landed so well. Very proud of you, tears in my eyes." That same minute, 7:30, Sabby responds, "Thank you so much, John. I am on cloud nine." 7:31, "Now we wait." This is me. "Now we wait. You breathe." Sabby, "Yes." I think we were both breathing at that moment because it marked really the end of an intensive 2-month journey. I look back and I still can't decide, was it a marathon that felt like a sprint or a sprint that felt like a marathon? Either way, it was an intense 2 months working together to help Sabby get first through the semifinals and then to the finals of the World Championship of Public Speaking. It was an incredible journey. I tell people I easily learned as much as I was able to share or to teach Sabby. And what I'd like to do tonight in the time that we have is a few things. I'd like to share with you a couple of looks behind the curtain, so to speak, so you get a sense of how the talk developed and some of the issues that we dealt with. I'd like to give some lessons that I think are really instructive coming out of this in terms of, yes, speech contests, but more importantly, coaching. If you go into a speech contest, either as a participant or a coach, I think there are some things here that you'll find valuable. But I also think if you're coaching outside of Toastmasters, like in the real world where it really matters, I think these lessons also apply. I want to leave a little bit of time as well towards the end for any questions that you have so that we can talk about things that are of interest to you. And then I'll share a couple of resources, that posts that I've written, long posts where I go into much more detail than we have time to cover tonight. And at your own pace, you can read a little bit more about both Sabby's final speech and also our coaching journey together. So, the coaching journey. Generally, it looks so glamorous and dramatic, especially when, you're the protege, the one being coached, wins. But the audience, they see the champion, but they don't see the process. And the process is much less glamorous. It's a lot of bleary-eyed early morning or late night Zooms, unshaven like I am now. I'm trying to get into the spirit of the coaching. It's, discussions agonizing over what's a good synonym for this word, trying to come up with something like that. But that's really the whole part of the process. It's about working your way through, because he only has, in a Toastmaster speech, you have a maximum of 7 minutes and 30 seconds. You have to make each second count. And so for each minute of that speech, you are putting in hours of time thinking about it, discussing it back and forth. At the beginning, how did this relationship begin? Well, I've known Sabby for many years, and when I heard that he had won the district contest, I sent him, like many others, a congratulatory message. And then I said, "I know you're probably going to be getting a lot of offers for people to coach. That's great. If you would like me to help you in any way, just let me know. But if not, absolutely no problem at all. I just want to make the offer." And I think that's the first lesson that I think is really important. If you are offering to be a coach, I think you've got to approach the whole relationship from a position of humility. You want to have this servant mindset, and maybe the person already has a couple other coaches. I know Sabby chatted extensively. He had another coach whom I still have not ever spoken to, and that's great. For him, it was two principal coaches. Some people like more. But you really have to respect the speaker in this case. What is it that they are looking for? And the second thing is, you've got to feel, both parties have to feel comfortable with the relationship. I get lots of requests now, as a professional speaker. I get requests, on an almost weekly basis of people inquiring, can you do a training for this company, or can you coach me? And my response is always the same. If it sounds like something that I might be able to do, I say, let's jump on a 30-minute Zoom call, no cost, no obligation, for two reasons. Number one, I get a better sense of whether I can really help. And number two, just as importantly, we both get a sense of whether we are comfortable with working with each other, because that for me is fundamental in the coaching relationship. each party has to feel comfortable with the other. And if it doesn't feel right, you shouldn't go into the relationship, because it's really that feeling of trust and working together. It's the foundation of everything. My first thing that I said when Sabi sent me, well, I helped Sabi with both the semifinal speech and the final speech, but tonight I'm just going to focus on the final speech, just in the interest of time. When we first had our connection, the very first thing I did was not to offer any tips. My very first question was, what are you looking for from me? What's important for you now? Where do you need help? And this idea about asking as a coach, instead of coming up with tips and suggestions. We all have tips and suggestions. My God, Toastmasters, the whole ethos of Toastmasters is feedback. And so it gets wired into our brains. Oh, I got to give feedback, got to give feedback. And yes, feedback is important. But in a coaching relationship, there is a time for feedback and there is a time for just listening. There's a great book, some of you may be aware of it, and I've pulled it off the shelf, called The Coaching Habit. Has anybody, just raise your hand, has anybody heard of this book? A few of you have. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. What I like is not so much the title, I like the subtitle of the book. And the subtitle reads, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. And there are 7 chapters in the book, and each chapter is all about a fundamental question that a coach should ask the person being coached. Instead, there comes a point in time when you have to offer advice, but it's also about finding out what is important to the person being coached. How can you help him or her? Another lesson that I think is really useful is to focus on your unique value. What are the things that you can really help a person with? And working with Sabi was great. Sabi is an outstanding speaker, as we know. You don't win the World Championship of Public Speaking unless you're an outstanding speaker. But like any person, he's not perfect. He has strengths and he has weaknesses. I have strengths and weaknesses. We all do. And what I think worked really well in this relationship was that we meshed at a very good level. We complemented each other very well. He's got the great sense of humor. He's got the great physicality. He's got, the great voice. And where I thought I could add help, and where he actually asked me for, was things like structuring the speech and making sure it flows well, also adding some humor, also adding rhetorical devices, that kind of thing. And so, as a coach, as a speaker looking for a coach, be clear in your mind what it is you're looking for from a coach. And if you're going in as the coach, ask the speaker, what is it that you need from me? What help can I give? So, taking a little bit of a closer look at the final speech. Not many people know this, but less than a month before he went to Philadelphia for the conference, he still hadn't picked a final speech. He was really struggling with it. And Sabi sent me rough drafts of 2 speeches. The first one, I thought, it wasn't impressive. It wasn't great. It had some ideas, but generally, no, I thought it's pretty bland. The other one was only marginally better. I said we could work with it, but what I said is, give it some more thought. You've got time, give it some more thought. And eventually, he came up with a speech, the speech that won the World Championship. And this is something that I had completely forgotten. He had given different version of this speech at the district humorous speech contest in Lyon, way back in 2014, 11 years ago. I was at that contest, just as an observer watching. I was there, and he had actually asked me for advice. So I had actually given him some insights on some tips on that speech way back when, but I had completely forgotten. And when I got the text of the speech, he said, "This one I feel good about," in his message. And I read it. And it was rough and it needed work. But there was a spark there. Like I felt it. I felt it both in his message that he felt he was into this speech. And as I read through the speech, I was thinking, yeah, this is something that we can work with. This is something that we can do. So another lesson is if you're going into whether it's a speech or a big presentation, you want to feel really comfortable with the material. You want to feel this is something I can work with. This is something that is meaningful for me. Now, when we looked at the speech, we were strategizing. We both agreed on the importance of using humor. And the reason I said this, like there, you look at great speeches throughout history, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, or Winston Churchill's We Will Fight Them on the Beaches, or any one of a number of, Mr. Gorbachev, Tear Down That Wall by Reagan. They're not humorous speeches, they're serious speeches, and serious speeches have a place. But in the Toastmasters contest, what often happens is that you get speech after speech after speech that is serious, that has somebody dying or somebody, dead or whatever. And I can tell you, I know several of the former world champions or the past world champions, and they told me, and I heard this years ago, one or two of them were saying to me that the champions every year, they have like a little checkbox sheet. Everybody, they check how many times in each speech somebody mentions somebody dead or dying because they say it's so overdone. And so what I discussed with Sabi, I said, it's a funny speech. It's a humorous speech with a really powerful message. And I think this is really good. So we leaned into the humor. We wanted it to feel natural, but we really leaned into it. Many of you might be familiar with the British comedy group, one of my favorites, Monty Python. And one of the characters of Monty Python is John Cleese. Interesting side note, in the 1970s and 80s, John Cleese produced a series of videotapes on everything from activities, public speaking, that kind of thing. But Cleese said something that I think is really powerful. He said, if you can get the audience to laugh, you get them on your side. If you get them on your side, they're much more open to your ideas. So humor, when it's done well, is a really powerful thing. And on my blog, and I'll share the link to my blog at the end, I've written a number of articles analyzing speeches, even serious speeches, where the speaker brought in humor. And it served a really important purpose for the audience. So we leaned into all kinds of humor. There was physical humor, which Sabi is excellent at. I've got really nothing much to say about that in terms of lessons to give. Self-deprecating humor. There was misdirection. And when I watched the final speech, I've watched it obviously a couple times, I counted, and there were 30 laughs and 3 mini applauses in the middle of a speech, which is huge, which is huge. So that is something we really worked on. We also worked on, at my suggestion, adding in lots of rhetorical devices. Now, I'm a big fan of rhetorical devices, and these are simple ways of saying words in a certain manner that makes a real effect. And so we brought in things like, if you go through the speech, you'll see lots of tricolons. Tricolon is a series of 3 things. Yeah, I came, I saw, I conquer. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's always 3. 3 is really powerful. We had alliteration. We had antithesis, where you compare 2 starkly different things. We had something known as anagnoresis. That's when, for those of you who've seen the speech, this is when an anagnoresis is when the main character realizes, has a revelation. He understands something. You often see this in a movie, that the hero has a sudden revelation. And in the speech, this is when Sabi realizes, hey, maybe I can't be a Bollywood actor, but I can still perform on stage. And so we brought all of this in. And I think rhetorical devices are important. You don't want to overdo it, but let's not forget it's a 2-word phrase that we're all using all the time: public speaking. It's all about speaking. Yes, there are gestures and they are important, but the core of your message is the words. So you need to spend time thinking of the words. And I work in other languages and I've given speeches in other languages, so huge respect for everyone here who is competing or working in English when that's not your mother tongue. I know it's not easy, but even if it's not your mother tongue, you can still have an impact by just studying even just a handful, two, three, four core rhetorical devices. And they really do add add spice to your speech. Another lesson that for me was a really important one was knowing when to push and knowing when to step back. Public speaking coaching, it can't be like this. You cannot have the two parties like butting heads, boxing each other. It's more like Tai Chi, if I can put it this way. There's push and there's pull, but you're always moving in the same way at the same time. So I'll give you two examples in the speech where I made a suggestion and Sabby pushed back, and I thought, no, he's right. We're not going to do it. So the first was in the speech, and again, for those who haven't seen the speech, actually, just quick show of hands, who has not seen the speech? Has anybody not watched Sabby's speech? So there's a few. I'm not doing justice to the speech, but he talks about growing up in India, wanting to be a Bollywood actor. His parents say, his father says, no, you've got to go and get like a corporate job. So that's what he does. He goes to Amsterdam, where he is now, and then he tries out for acting and it doesn't work out. And he goes back to his corporate job, but then he finds fulfillment doing what he's doing there. That is the broad view, but please go watch the speech because it really is a gem of a speech to watch. He does it so well. When he gets to Amsterdam, there's a point where he wanted to call it a city of, he had three things for it. And I was thinking Amsterdam, and because he wanted to bring in the word creativity, which begins with the letter C. So I said, what about a city of canals, cannabis, and creativity? Because that's what Amsterdam is. And I liked it. It was a tricolon. It was humorous. It had alliteration. It also had, it set up a joke in the next line. He said, maybe I'd give it a try. Not the cannabis, but the creativity. He liked the idea, but then the more he thought about it, he just didn't feel comfortable talking about cannabis in the speech. And I thought, you know what? I respect that. It's not a big thing. It went out. Another example is he talks about the river Ganga, which in English is better known as the Ganges River. And it fits perfectly in the speech. And I said, a lot of people will not be native Indians like Sabi is. He's from Calcutta. And I said, what about it's calling it just the Ganges River? And he tried it, but he said, I've grown up my whole life calling it the River Ganga. It just doesn't feel right for me. And again, I had to respect that. So two instances of when, like as a coach, you have to know when to kind of step back and respect the speaker's wishes. Now, there are other cases, though, where I did push harder, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So, in the speech, again, for the benefit of those who have not seen it, he's in Amsterdam and there's the play Romeo and Juliet, and there's a cast call. So he says, I'm going to go, I'm going to try out. And up until that point in the speech, he's very high energy. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to say, so I was going to go for the role of Romeo. And I said, no, let's not do it that way. I said, let's use misdirection. You've already been up and up, but now you're in Amsterdam and you're away from home and you're unsure, and this is your first time. Let's do this. And the line ended up being, so I decided to go out, but I thought I'd be conservative. I went for the part of Romeo. And it got a big laugh because you weren't expecting if he's going to be conservative, he's not going to go for the role of Romeo. But it was again misdirection, and it got a really nice laugh. And he went along with it. And he was telling me later, he says he was so glad that he did. Another suggestion that I had was to poke fun at the Toastmasters annual general meeting. Now, I don't know if you've been to a Toastmasters annual general meeting. They're important, they're great, they serve a really important purpose, but they can be really boring. And I just said, why don't you compare like the boring corporate meetings to the Toastmasters annual general meeting? And I said, it's edgy, it's risky, but when you're at that level, you got to do something that kind of sets yourself apart. And so he brought the line in, and then we added to say, not the one yesterday. And he turned to the contest chair, the one from years ago, and it was perfect. If you watch the speech, he almost forgot the line. And I almost had a heart attack watching. I was watching it live from home here in Switzerland, but he recovered quickly and he got it in. So it was a really nice example of again him taking something on. So for me, that's the lesson as a coach. It's and also as the speaker, it's knowing when to push and then when to step back and respect the wishes of the speaker. I would say that the part of the speech though that I'm most proud about was the gesture where he talks about Bollywood at the beginning of the speech. And I gave him this idea. I said, most people I think know Bollywood, but you can play with it. I said, you've got great physicality. You know, Bollywood movies where they're always dancing like this. When I worked at the United Nations, I had a lot of Indian colleagues and Sri Lankan colleagues, and I'm good friends with all of them still. And my one Sri Lankan very good friend, Lalanath, he said, Bollywood movies, it's screw in the light bulb, pet the dog, screw in the light bulb, pet the dog. And I said, why don't you bring that in? And he liked it. It was funny because in practice, he kept saying, screw the bulb and pet the dog, screw the bulb and pet the dog. And I said, hang on. I said, we can't say it that way. We got to find a different way. So he just said, fix the bulb and pet the dog, fix the bulb, pet the dog. It got a good laugh. But that's not why it's my favorite part of the speech. It's my favorite part of the speech because later on, towards the end, when he is now in his corporate world, he said, I can still perform with a clicker and a projector, with a clicker and a projector. He had the genius idea of bringing this gesture back. And for me, it's a perfect example of a coach and speaker relationship where an idea is given, the speaker accepts it, and then builds on it. That's a mark, I think, of a really good relationship. In fact, you know, watching that speech, there are parts of it where I watch it and I'm being sincere here. I genuinely cannot remember whose idea it was. And I think that's, you know, a really nice thing. It makes me very happy that I can't remember, was it my idea or was it his? I genuinely don't know. And that shows, I think, just how into the process we were. I do, as Jessica mentioned, improv. In fact, I have a show in 2 days here in Geneva. We have our monthly show. And when we do corporate trainings in improv, I often end them by quoting from American President Harry Truman. He said, it's amazing what we can accomplish when we don't care who gets the credit. And that's a really nice, it's a nice thought and one that I think is really important for the coaching process. You both go into it with this goal of we want to win this contest in this case, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And everybody is just focused on the outcome. And, you know, stepping back from speech contests, what an amazing world it would be if more people went out into their jobs, their societies, wherever, with this attitude of how can I contribute without worrying if I get the credit or not. So those are some of the insights. A few other thoughts. There were a couple times during the practice, in the practice sessions, we had a number online. Um, Sabby would have he would do the final speech, and there was one time it came out really bad. Like it was not good at all. Like it was flat. It wasn't good at all. And I was watching it, and then when it was all done, I said, he knew it wasn't good, and I said that was terrible. That was really bad. And I said, that's excellent. And he looked at me and says, what do you mean? I said, this is what you want to do. You want to get the bad practices out in practice. This is now you know what it feels like to give a bad speech. And it's good to get it out of your system because you can't be on all the time. In fact, if he was always good, I would have been more worried watching in the finals because, you know, sometimes these things happen. And of course, we didn't leave it there. We talked a bit about it. And then before we signed off, I said, all right, do it again because you don't want to leave the person like with a bad practice. He did it again and it was great. and he felt much higher. The only other thing, two other thoughts before we turn to take a couple questions, is when I called him the day before the finals. He was in Philadelphia in his hotel room, and I could feel that he was really wired up. I mean, who wouldn't be? And we did talk about the speech, but the very first thing I said, okay, he got on the phone and he was talking like a mile a minute. I said, okay, stop, take a breath, close your eyes, and then I walked him through a couple of box breathing exercise where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold, exhale, and then pause. We did that, some visualizations just to ground them. And I think that was really helpful. And it's a reminder that, yeah, as a coach, you've got to be approach this with a holistic point of view. Yes, you're looking at the different aspects of the speech and the wording and the rhetorical devices, but you're also dealing with a person here as well. And a person who's facing, challenges, and he's got the excitement and the adrenaline, and you've got to be mindful of that as well. And he had drawn speaker number two, early, which is early out of 8. And a lot of people think going too early is not good. And he said, I drew number two. He said, is that good? I said, that's great. I said, what you're going to do is you're going to go out and you're going to set the bar so high, nobody gets over it. Now, had he drawn speaker number 8, I would have said, that's excellent. You're going to be the last person they hear. You're going to show them why your speech is the winning speech. Whatever he drew, I wasn't going to say, oh, it's not good. And why not? Because it was one of the things you can't control. And I think that's probably the final lesson. I'm a great fan of Stoic philosophy. I've got books behind me on the shelf, Stoic philosophy, and always on my desk is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And I've read it 3, 4 times. It's highlighted, it's noted, pencil. And every day I'll pick it up and I'll just randomly open to a passage and read it. I find it a really grounding, practical philosophy. And the Stoics were really focused on trying to control what they could control and letting go of what they can't. And in a speech contest, you can't control the order in which you speak. You can't control what the other speakers are doing. You can't control the judges. And you don't. There are 20. There was 1,000 people in the room, and I think there's about 21, or it might be more now. Let's say 21 to 25 judges. That's a really small minority out of 1,000 people. And they're not professionals. They're just Toastmasters doing this job. They're experienced Toastmasters, but at the end of the day, they're just handing in a sheet of paper that says first, second, third. And somebody wakes up and maybe they like a speaker, even though the speaker doesn't do everything, all of the points on the judge's ballot. But who knows? And if you change 1 or 2 judges, you might get a different result. So that's what I would say in the coaching relationship is really focus on the things you can control. You do that, you take care of the speaker. It's going to be a good result either way. So I'm going to pause there because I'm mindful of the time, and I want to open this up for questions. Now, if somebody's put them in the chat, I don't know, Jessica or Isidro, if there's in the chat, would you like to read them? Hey, Rui. My God. So I'm wearing my contacts, so that I don't get reflection of my glasses. But of course, that means I can't read anything on the screen. So does anybody have a question?
Yeah, question here.
Yes, and so I see Tracha with her hands up.
Yeah. Tracha, Marian, then Marian.
And then Pekka. Okay, so Tracha, Miriam, and Pekka. Tracha, please.
Hi, John. Thanks so much. This is really enlightening. My question for you is about memorability. You mentioned having place number 2, and my impression was that there was so much charisma that really sealed the deal. But for me, the humor and the lightness and his attire, I also wonder if you could comment on his suit, which also made him stand out. But then what I was thinking about the next day is like, I don't remember what he talked about. I remember the emotion. And so, can you talk a little bit about that as a speechwriter as well?
Sure. To your first point, again, he drew number two. That's what he had to deal with. The suit was excellent. He came out with like a red suit, white shirt, no tie, I think red slacks and white shoes. Interestingly, the guy, I can't remember his name, who won second place, he also had a red suit as well. So red's not my color. So damn it, I can't wear red. But yeah, it was, it was his charisma, the energy, all of that, I think played a role. But that all ties into your second point, which for me is the most important one. The great American poet laureate, Maya Angelou, she said it best. She said, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that's the real lesson there, is that you want people to feel something. And so all of the effort that we put into the structure of the speech and the storytelling and the rhetorical devices and the humor with the misdirection, all of that all of those things were ingredients in a recipe that made a real emotional impact on people. So yeah, it's hugely important. It doesn't surprise me that you can't remember the specifics, but just the feeling for sure. Miriam.
Hi, my question is, what would you do if you met someone who really wants you as a coach, but you didn't really match the ideas? You can't match, and like there's no time. That's my
So,
question.
so for you, if you as a coach don't feel that it's a good match, then I would say you should not do it. You should not feel bad about turning the person down. You can be honest and say, I just don't think it's the right fit. Or you can say, I've got other commitments and I can't take it on. So I think your instinct is correct, Miriam. If you don't feel it's a right fit, you shouldn't do it because if, it's like anything in life, if it's not, yes, let's do it, like an enthusiastic yes, there are other things that you can do. And there are other people that you can coach as well. So who's next? I think Pekka,
Yuki.
or sorry, okay, Yuki.
Yuki.
Yes.
Thank you. My question relates to coaching in person versus on Zoom. I'm curious, did you actually meet with Savi in person or on Zoom?
It was only on Zoom because he was in the Netherlands and I'm in Switzerland. And it's less than ideal, but because we knew each other and there was a basis for a relationship, it worked well. Having said that, I have worked in my business life. I've worked with people coaching them exclusively online, and we've never met in person, and it can work out. I think, like most people, I'm a huge fan of in person working with people face to face, but there's no question that Zoom allows us to do, amazing things like what we're doing tonight. We've got people from Morocco to Switzerland to the US to Finland to Portugal and other places as well.
Mm-hmm. So well, I'm not a coach. I'm looking for a coach. And how would coach you explain like staging or no, there's something that Zoom cannot, there's a limitation. Yeah.
It is a limitation, but what we did when Sabi would practice in his room, he would set the camera up and step back so I could see all of the gestures. And then when I would, demonstrate for him, I could step back a little bit and I could try and show him as well. I'm a little more cramped here in my office, but it worked. But yes, it's definitely a limitation.
Thank you.
Ramin, buddy.
Hi, thanks, John. First of all, thank you for inviting me also to watch it with you, so I can testify to everybody. And I can say this because John confirmed on LinkedIn, I saw your tears in your eyes when he won, and I think it was well deserved. So thank you for showing your emotionality that evening as well live. Yuki took a couple of my questions, so that's great. So you answered already, you did it online. I would like to go with two questions then. More specifically, How do you train? And I know you're very good with structuring content. You said it. And as you know, we work a little bit together. I'm interested in body and delivery. Can you give more details, except the camera, how you moved on that with body and delivery and the nonverbal? But secondly, what I'm really interested in, you said it a little bit. Many of us who are coaches and trainers, we still used to say this old, 7% is contact, 93% is body and voice, which is not true.
No.
Based. So I would like to know yours. I haven't read the latest research. I just had a communication feedback today. What do you think is really the percentage of content versus nonverbal? And if you can specify body and voice, I'd like to have your subjective point of view. How
Okay.
much is voice, body versus words? If we really have to give a number.
So to put it in context, that what Ramin's talking about is the famous study by psychologist Dr. Albert Mehrabian, who said in a communication scenario, the words only count for 7%, the tone counts for 38%, and body language counts for 55%. And it is a study that has been misinterpreted for decades, and it is still misinterpreted today. And my head feels like it's going to explode when I hear people saying, well, in a presentation, your words only count for 7%, which is utter nonsense. Because by that calculation, if you don't use any words, I should still be able to understand 93% of your message. Well, okay, without using words, tell me what you had for dinner last night, right? You can't do it. What that study was about had to do with highly emotionally charged conversations between usually two or three people. Example, husband's been out with his buddies at the bar watching the games 3 nights in a row, comes home on the 4th night, his wife's made a great meal, and he says, oh, I'm going to go out and watch the semifinals tonight. Are you okay with that? And the wife says, fine. Now, she says fine, but does she mean fine? No, she's really pissed off. So that's the only case it applies. Where does it apply in presentations? Oh, I still think content is king. I think you want to have something valuable to say, but delivery definitely has an impact. Poor delivery can ruin good content. I don't want to give a number. I don't know, 50, 60% content, 20% tone, delivery. I think content is the most important thing, but delivery definitely has an impact on it. In terms of the coaching on the body and the voice, I mean, the only time, Sabby sent me a message. He said that for one part of the speech, he was going to sing it. And I thought, oh God, no, please, no, don't sing. Because I've seen singing it didn't look really good. But when we tried it out in the practice, he sang it. And any misgivings that I had evaporated. It was fine. So some quick answers, Ramin. So moving on, Asya. And by the way, we're a couple minutes to 8 or to 9 my time. I'm more than happy to keep going if people want to keep asking questions. But just to respect those who have other plans, what I want to do before we take the next question is share something with you, and I'll put it in the chat. I want to share 2 links on my blog. Here's the chat. So what I'm pasting are 2 things. A post that I did on the coaching lessons, and you can, it's a lot of the things I talked about tonight, but you can refresh your memory and look at others. And then the other one is a detailed, it's a 5,000 word, minute by minute, second by second analysis of the speech, telling you a little bit about why we said things a certain way, what we had originally said. So that'll give you some insight as well. So if you have to leave, and I feel free to share those with whoever you like. I hope you find them useful.
If I may jump in, John, and just to the punctual ones that have something else at this time, I'd like to thank you officially from Isidro and I and the team from the district. Thank you so much. So many questions I can see, and to get the insight to what it's like to coach a world champion and to know that they have flaws as well, and they didn't write the perfect speech the very first time. It was really it was very generous of you to share that with us, and hope you didn't mind.
My pleasure.
Yes. Everyone, you want to give a reaction, a smile to John, and when you have to pop off, you pop off. And if he's going to stay a couple more minutes, you can stay on the line. Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Stephen, for that love. Thank you, John. We'll see you at another time live.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, Asia.
Hello everyone, I am Toastmasters Asia. I live in Senegal. I have a question about the content of the speech. I often hear that the winning speeches are speeches about a problem that the person have faced and how he or she have succeeded in have managed to solve the problem. And I feel that every year the first place goes to the person who has like the most impactful problem. Do you agree that you always have to follow this pattern in order to win a contest?
Well, thank you for the question. And if you're from Senegal, I have to say Nangadef. I've been there, a beautiful country. What you described is actually the classic hero's journey story. It's you have somebody who is living a normal life, typically maybe not expected to do much. They're faced with a problem. There's challenges. There's ups and downs, and eventually they solve the problem, and they're the hero. And this is the structure that we see in book after book, movie after movie. It's a good structure for a reason. It's because it's existed for thousands of years. Joseph Campbell, in his classic book, Hero with a Thousand Faces, he talks about this hero's journey. Having said that, does it have to be a major problem? No. In fact, if you watch, a really good speech to watch is the 2005 champion, Lance Miller. Lance is a great guy. He gave a talk where he was just, he just started to validate people and make people feel better about themselves. And it wasn't any life-shattering, disease or accident or setback he had to overcome. It was just a normal thing. And he said something. I saw Lance speaking at an event after he had won. And he talked about how, for the longest time, he was, he'd listened to people who had these, terrible stories of, they were homeless or they were a drug addict and how they overcame it. And he didn't have any of that. He had a pretty normal upbringing. And he said he would sometimes think, why couldn't I have been a homeless drug addict? And then he realized, he said, you don't need to have something dramatic to have a great speech. You can have a great idea, I don't know, cooking dinner in your kitchen. You can have a great idea doing very simple things. So, yes, Asia, it is a good structure, but I wouldn't say you have to have that kind of a structure. In fact, if everybody's doing that structure, if you can come up with something unique, to me, that makes you stand out a bit more. Pekka.
Yes, hi John.
Hey.
So first of all, thanks John and the organizers. This is great stuff. I go to my question, which is that when you said that you were coaching Sabi for only 2 months, I was like, holy cow, like this is a multiple year journey. Like, how were you able to jump into this, like in the middle of the like last moments of this journey that then leads to the finals and the championship? So of course it helped that you knew each other already, but like for example, imagine if you hadn't met before, would you have been able to do this at all?
I think I would have, and assuming that, even if we hadn't met, Sabi is the same person, because I think we get along. I mean, we've gotten along from the first time we've met.
Yeah.
I think things that have helped me, able to jump in. Well, first of all, on the final speech, in a way, we were both jumping in together on this one because he only thought of this at the with only a few weeks to go. The semifinal speech had been developed. I did help him work on a few things. We changed a few things, but it was already there. What I think helped me is, one, having been a Toastmaster and having competed in all of the different contests, that gave me a good understanding of what he was up against. Second, as a public speaker professionally for the last 10 years, helping people with speeches, being able to analyze something quickly and see, oh, if we change this around, it's like anything else. It's just a skill. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It becomes more, it becomes easier for me to quickly see, this is working, this isn't. Also, I think my training as a lawyer has helped me, even in the years since I've stopped practicing law, just being able to look at things from an analytical perspective and think quickly what makes sense, what doesn't. So it was intense, but I was committed to it. So I made sure that I set aside the proper amount of time, both for emails and WhatsApp and then Zoom calls as well.
Thanks.
Virginia. Virginia, are you there? Yeah. I can't, you're on mute in case you're talking. Okay, maybe what we'll do is we'll go to Alexandru and then we'll come back to Virginia.
Hello, Mr. Zimmer. First of all, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Great stuff. And of course, we all want to draw as much as possible from here. So I have one question regarding the speeches in Toastmaster contests. In your opinion, based on this rhetorical distribution, ethos, pathos, logos, what percentage go to pathos? Because I have also a lot of discussion in Toastmasters Club about this one.
My honest opinion, I think too much goes to pathos in Toastmasters. Toastmasters, look, I've been a member since 2007. I will always be a member. I love the organization. It's given me a lot. I enjoy, the most important thing, the people I've met, many of the people here, we have met in many different circumstances. It's a great organization. When it comes to speaking, and I work with, in my club, new members come in, I tell them all the same thing. I say, look, Toastmasters has a very particular style. It can be very theatrical. It can be over the top. I'm convinced that had Martin Luther King been a Toastmaster, his evaluators would have told him, oh, no, Martin, you got to come out from behind the lectern. And when you say, I have a dream, you got to go, I have a dream and gesture to the stars, right? Well, no, you don't have to do that. Here's what I tell people. I say, use Toastmasters as a laboratory. Definitely try things you would be uncomfortable trying out in the real world. Be a little more wild with your gestures, be a little more theatrical. But then when you go out into the real world, I mean, where the speaking really counts, let's be clear. You should be training here in Toastmasters to speak better out in the world. You've got to learn to adjust the dial. You've got to learn to adapt. The beauty of Toastmasters is that you can test yourself to see how far you can go. And then once you know how far you can go, then you can adapt it. But yeah, I mean, I've seen speeches where the person is flopping around on the stage like a sea lion at Marine World and they win. And I didn't think it was the best speech, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Nadine, good to see you.
Hello, everybody. I'm from District 59, the district to which Sabi belongs, in fact. And I think we are here
Virginia, I think.
Recreating District 59, because I remember, John, when in Athens at the last conference of District 59, you won both contests.
Yeah.
For your speech and evaluation, and you went to the world competition.
Yeah, Athens was great.
Yes, it was a great boost for everyone. And I'm very glad to be here and to be able to actually ask you this question, because I followed your blog and the analysis of the performance of Sabi. I also saw Sabi at our district conference when he won the contest. And I watched his final speech somewhere in Portugal. I was on holidays at that time, near the road. And the moment I saw him walking on this stage, he practically jumped with an incredible energy there. I just felt he's going to win. From the very energy with which he entered the stage. Despite the fact that I agree with you, I was a little bit afraid when he went on his knees at the beginning to kiss the stage. But I feel he owned the stage, this kind of energy that was there. Do you know what happened behind the scenes? Where did he get this energy from? And to what extent do you think this kind of flow and energy can actually help a contestant succeed?
I think thank you, Virginia. You get, I always tell people you get one chance to make a good first impression. And the minute the audience can see you, you're on stage, even if you haven't started speaking yet. So you want to come out. I mean, I think we've all may have had this experience. Maybe in school, you see a teacher coming in who's looking angry or sad, and a teacher coming in who's bright and happy. You feel different. And so we talked about this. We worked on, you want to come on stage, shake, acknowledge the contest chair. You want to pause. They now do a mic check and then look out and then just go. And the idea for kneeling down to kiss the stage, that was Sabby's idea. I liked it, but it was interesting. And I said in the post, at first, like he hesitated, and then was he going down or not? And I'm thinking, have they started timing? And it was a concern, but luckily in the end, it worked out okay. Nadine.
Hey, John, lovely to
Hey,
see you. That
good to
close,
see
like
you.
in hug distance. My question is, you coming from the improv world and knowing the power of improvisation and the authenticity it gives, but on the other hand, on a world championship level where every second counts, every word counts, until what level of getting higher on the competition levels, or in what cases would you leave room or recommend as a coach room or apply in your speeches improvisation, like calling the room, any other ways? Or would you say, no, after some level, don't do it because it's too risky, you might lose something? Balancing, like, do you have any experience or any tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm working with somebody on a business speech, I tell them you never want to memorize it. You want to internalize it so that you're flowing from this topic to this to this to this, and then it's more natural. But a contest speech where you've got 7 minutes and 30 seconds and every second counts, and you've got to stick mainly to the script. It's an exception to the rule in general. It doesn't mean that you can't improvise. And sometimes the audience reacts in a way and you just say something, and that's fine as long as you get back on track. There was when I the screw in the light bulb and pet the dog. When Sabi did it the second time, a clicker and a projector, a clicker and a projector. If you watch, the audience really liked that. And he just kind of got into it. He's kind of like, yeah, you get what and that wasn't planned. That was just spontaneous. And which is fine because it didn't take too long. But what I can tell you, when we were practicing the speech, he would consistently come in at 5 minutes, 55 seconds, 6 minutes, or 6:05. It was always in that range. And I was very comfortable with that because I knew he was going to get laughter. And in the end, like I said, the 30 laughs, he finished at around 7:20, 7:22. So there was about 1 minute and 20 seconds of laughter, which you've got to factor in as well. When I did the humorous speech contest back in, it was in Hamburg and way back, I started getting laughs on my talk, like big laughs, like right early on, and it was great. But then I also got worried because I thought I'm going to go overtime. So as I was giving the speech in my head, I was actually cutting out parts just to make sure I didn't go over time. So to your question, I think in a contest speech, you want to leave maybe a very little bit of room for improvisation if it happens in the moment, but generally you want to stick to the speech.
Great, thanks.
Tracy, or Traka, sorry.
Yeah. Hi, John. I have a question regarding that timing and the alternate endings. My understanding from hearing Sabi speak about this is that there was another ending, or just in case for time wise, how to handle the time at the end. So I think that's a good lesson for everybody here. If you could unpack that a little bit. And then
Yeah.
also, I'm curious about the inside baseball of the training schedule. You've got 2 months. What does that look like? Is that your only client for 2 months? Are you all hands on deck? Are you meeting every day? Like, what does that actually look like from a tactical standpoint?
So to take the second question first, it was intensive, but it wasn't every day. I mean, I didn't want to make it every day because, 2 months every day, that's exhausting. And it had to be, we would come together and our sessions would be usually preceded by exchange of recent drafts and my comments on it. We worked on a Google spreadsheet together. Uh, WhatsApp messages, and then we would meet for between 1 and 2 hours and go through it intense. And then we kind of set, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what he would do in the interval before our next meeting. And then we would like maybe let a day or two go by. So it wasn't every day. And I was doing work as other work, for clients to earn to pay the rent and cover the meals. But it was, let's put it this way, it was steady but not overwhelming. And I think when it comes to speeches, and maybe some of you have had this experience, have you ever given a speech or practiced a speech so much that you feel like, oh God, it's overdone? It's like vegetables that you've left boiling for too long. They've lost a bit of the flavor. So you want to keep a little bit of that freshness. To the first part of your question, yes, we talked about this. We were comfortable with the time, but Sabby had said that if he got the red at a certain point, he would have we call an off ramp. In other words, a way to end earlier than the actual ending. Ultimately, he was fine, but a really good way to approach a speech like the humorous or the international speech is you should have in your mind clearly, roughly where you expect to be when the green card shows up at 5 minutes. And if you are behind, then you might have to either speed up a bit or cut the speech at the end. If you're ahead, you can slow down and play with it a bit. Similarly with the yellow and then the red. So, but for me, the green card was always the key card in terms of a reference point. Where am I in the speech? Am I on time? And if I was, close, then I would feel comfortable with it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ray.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. I joined late, so I missed the good 40 minutes. However, John, I have a few words to say.
Please.
No volcano today to mess things up.
Good. I remember that.
And I want to share with everyone here that when I met you in 2009 and the person in the half an hour that I've been on, you haven't changed. You're the same person, willing to share, willing to help out people. It sometimes costs to yourself. A few years ago, not many, I reached out to you to help a colleague. You immediately said yes. And on the second occasion that you helped him, you were even in transit at an airport. This is the man we have in front of us. So, John, I have a question for you, and I want you to be honest, as you always are. Is your daughter one of them? I think it was the youngest at the time, still the youngest, but maybe a young lady by now. Is she still your biggest fan?
I don't know. Daughters and dads, they grow out of it. Yeah, I think she's still a pretty big fan. And she's in Toronto. And one of the things she's doing is she does readings of her poetry, and she's also does improvisation as well. I have two daughters. One is all science, PhD in epidemiology, doing incredible research. The other one paints, plays piano, and arts. So yeah, she does that.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
Keep well,
Roy.
my mate.
Thanks, Roy. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Let's see, Matthew.
John, the question I have for you has to do with humor. So you talked about, for example, the I Have a Dream speech. 0 laughs. I guess I'm curious how you feel about championship speeches and playing with that humor dial, how much it's necessary and how much you can stay on message and be serious.
I think, I should share if you go on. So I've given you the link to 2 posts on my blog. There is another post which I think it's if you search something like humor, when to use it, how to use it, something like that, it's a really detailed analysis of why humor works well and when you can use it. There are clearly some speeches where you don't want to have humor, or certainly not too much. But you know, even in the darkest speeches, the heaviest speeches, humor can be a real a balm, like something for the audience. There's a man, Andrew, what's his last name? He gave a TED talk. It's a wonderful talk. It's one of my favorite TED talks, and he's a gay man. He's now married. They have a son, and he's basically, the title of the talk is called "How the Worst Moments of Your Life Make You Who You Are." So it's a really heavy topic, and he talks about the struggles he faced, and it's a really touching, emotional speech. But there are moments in that speech where he adds a bit of humor. And what you can feel, it's like a catharsis for the audience. It's like he's brought the audience down so much, but you can't leave them down. And so he like lifts them up back to the surface where they can get a breath of air before they go down again. So humor, even in the most serious of speeches, can play a role. Does it mean you always have to have humor? No. I mean, again, Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream," or Gettysburg Address, or you look at other great speeches in history, some of them have no humor, but they're incredibly powerful because of the way they were set, of the way the words were put together, and also the moment. I think the moment has a lot to do with it. Like if it's a serious moment where the nation is facing a crisis and you need leadership to come on with something inspirational, then humor is probably not the way you want to go. Here we're talking about a Toastmasters contest. And I certainly don't want to diminish the Toastmasters contest. I think what Sabi achieved is remarkable and it's commendable. And it's something that I have strived for in the past, and I've done all the different contests. But at the end of the day, it's just a speech contest. And really, outside of Toastmasters, well, most people don't even know what Toastmasters is. And of those who do, outside of Toastmasters, very few really care about the results of the speech. Again, it's not to diminish it. So in a Toastmasters speech contest, I think you've got more latitude in terms of bringing in humor. And I think, we saw from Sabi's speech that it makes a real big impact. Darren LaCroix's speech had a lot of the winning speech that had a lot of humor as well. Yeah, a lot of them do. And I think it's a lot of people feel uncomfortable with humor because they think you have to do stand-up. I've done stand-up comedy. That's a completely different kind of humor, very, very different. Improv is different. It's more about finding the humor in the situation. And if you go back and listen to Sabi's speech and read the analysis that I've written of it, you'll see that really what he's undoing is uncovering the humorous situation that already existed, from being raised in India to trying to out for Romeo and Juliet to, being a Bollywood actor in the corporate boardroom. So I think it is a powerful thing. And if for people who are not so comfortable with it, I challenge you to explore it. Try giving a humorous speech, see what it's like. Try telling humorous anecdotes at lunch with your colleagues. I think the way you get good with humor is to practice doing it. Isidro, we've come full circle.
Well, yes, but let me please do this. Last time the three of us was on Zoom, it was in 2021. Roy just said that he reached out to you to help a friend, and that friend was me. I didn't know you then, John, because I joined Toastmasters in 2017. Rui Enrique was so kind to introduce you to me, and ever since I admire you at so many levels, and you know that. And so, Rui, I would like to thank you in the presence of everybody for introducing me to this great man, this wise, maybe the wisest person I met in Toastmaster. And because of you, John, my English is much better because of Duolingo, you know that story. And when Sabi won, I was there in Philadelphia. When I didn't know that you had coached him. And when he mentioned you on the stage, I texted you. I said to you that I got goosebumps. I was so happy for him. And when I realized that you were involved, my happiness doubled. So thank you so much for that, for being who you are. And you don't know, but you are an inspiration. And I had that book over there. I had it, and I have it, and I read it. Rui, thank you so much. And I don't have questions. I just wanted to say this, and maybe to wrap up this event, because Jessica has left. Thank you, all of you, for coming to attend this. It's a master class. Honestly, it was a master class. John, thank you so much. And oh God.
Thank you, Isidro. Muito obrigado, my friend. Really appreciate it. Very touching words. It means a lot to me. Really happy to be able to participate. I think this Winner Circle series, I think it's an exciting thing, and I wish you best of success with future ones. And if my schedule permits, I will definitely try and attend. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. Appreciate you staying so long, and best of luck with whether it's competing or coaching or with whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
John.
Thank you.